Look, when I was younger, I had a friend who was a prison guard. And this guy was neat and this guy was organised. And he used to tell me that the reason for that was, in his job, order was everything. And it makes sense, right? He was working with some of the most notorious criminals in Australia's history. And so in that sort of job, you want at least a reasonable level of control and order. Well, in my own career, about 5 years into my own career, I realised that a lot of what I did in my job was similar to that of my friend. And that's because I'm a teacher. And that is not that we have prisoners, but we also like a lot of control and a lot of order in our work. And being a teacher means that I've spent most of my life in schools. And people have asked me, why would you become a teacher? If you knew me at school, you're more likely to ask, how did you become a teacher? And look, there I am. I wasn't a bad student, I wasn't naughty, but I wasn't invested either. And part of the reason I wasn't naughty was quite simply because when I went to school back in those days, if I got in trouble at school, I had double trouble to pay when I got home and my parents found out. Sometimes now when I ring parents about the behaviour of their children, I still feel like I'm the one in trouble. And look, I had my moments as well, right? I remember once my maths teacher after an exam, Mr. Wakely, said to me, I hope I didn't see you looking at Greg's answers, to which I quickly responded, so do I. Now, let me explain to you what a day at school looked like for me back then. We used to start with tutor group in the morning, where we'd mark the roll, and then we'd have 8 40-minute periods throughout the day. We'd have 3 periods, then we'd have a 20-minute recess break, then we'd have another 3 periods, and a 40-minute lunch break, and then we'd finish the day with 2 more periods. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. The reason why it sounds familiar is because no matter where you went to school in the world, or no matter how old you are, you would probably be familiar with that type of structure. And the reason for that is it's been a structure that we've used for over 160 years. And in it, we break learning up into age, ability, and subject area. And I want to suggest to us that what we've heard today and what we know in our spirits is that it's no longer fit for purpose. I mean, the broad approach to learning seems pretty simple, doesn't it, across the world? Start school at about 5 or 6, learn the basics, get good at regurgitating some facts, do some assessment tasks, do an exam, and then get a 4-number digit at the end of that. And by the way, that 4-digit number may not be needed into the future, because we know that only 1 in 4 university places has actually required that number over the last few years. And if you're like the students at my school, 100% of students who have applied to university have received an offer before they actually sat a final exam. And it reminds me a little bit of this t-shirt that I saw for the first time in Dallas Airport. Don't worry, I'm going to zoom in for you. The t-shirt explains how to draw Darth Vader. Some of you are taking notes right now. It goes through like this. Start with the head and body, not a bad place to start. Secondly, add a cape. Sounds good. Thirdly, draw the face, gloves and boots. And then add some details and shading and you're finished. It's absurd, right? That is not how you draw Darth Vader. But I can't help when I look at this t-shirt to think this is exactly what we do in schools, isn't it? We actually think that learning is linear, that we actually divide subjects up into discrete subjects, and then we teach them to children for 5 or 6 hours a day. And I think the evidence is clear that it's just not working. Recent OECD data is showing us this, that on any given day, around the world, 29% of young people when they arrive at school are disengaged with learning. 29%. Add to that a further 24% who are actively disengaged. That means they ask to go to the bathroom, they're late to class, they go to the sick bay, or they misbehave so they get thrown out of class. You add those 2 numbers together and you get 53% of young people in schools are disengaged with learning across the world. And of the 47% who remain, who we think are engaged, we're not really sure how many of those are thinking of jumping to the other side. And I think it's sadly because these days I think we've been socially conditioned into valuing student performance over student learning. You see, in some ways, as adults, we've become spectators in the form of academic Hunger Games. And the capital is creating rules to create winners and losers. And the sad thing about that is that our children are the ones who are the collateral in that. And I want to ask us, are we happy with that? Are you happy with that? Right now in schools, our children are almost unable to take a breath because of a ridiculously packed curriculum that requires them to actually hear all those great watchwords of school. Like sit down, be quiet. Actually, that was my schooling, not yours. Sit down, be quiet, line up. Who said you could speak? Get that out of your mouth. Did you knock before you came in? Because we need to make sure that we plough through the curriculum. And as parents, we sort of see the rush and hurry, and we'd like to ask to slow down a little bit if we could, but we fear that if we do that, our children will fall behind. And so we convince ourselves that in the long run, it's actually better to overload them now, so that at least in the future, they will have options and availability to do the things they want to do. And in the meantime, they actually lose interest in learning. 53% would actually show you that. And yet we comfort ourselves by telling our children that while school doesn't seem what seems meaningless now, that when they finish school with more options, they will actually see that it was all worthwhile. And by the way, in the middle of all that as well, we'll throw them some high-stakes tests before they're teenagers. And in those tests, we'll actually decide whether or not they are here or here at the age of 7. And then the government will actually take this individual data and they'll group it all together. And then they'll give that to the newspapers, and the newspapers will make league tables. And our children become the collateral in an awful form of academic apartheid. 100%. And I've seen the distress this can cause. I remember once a mum came to my office after our national testing and came into my office and through tears and hitting her hand on the arm of the chair, said to me, "What is left for my daughter now?" Her daughter was 11, by the way, and had actually got above national standards for her examination. And I wonder what it says to our kids when we react like that. And here's the kicker, is the research is clear that academic stress is a leading cause of mental illness in our kids. I just want to wonder what we want to do about that as adults. Well, here's what I know after a lifetime in schools. If you take nothing else from me today, take this. We don't want our kids to peak at school. They have a life of probably 70 years beyond school, and we want to make sure that they peak sometime in that 70 years. But for us to do that, we need to actually go back and ask two questions. Firstly, what is education? And secondly, who is it for? And it's my hope that we can actually redesign learning while achieving great academic outcomes for our children. We can also redesign learning so that they actually learn to fall in love with learning again. And to make it important to them, we need to engage them emotionally in it. It's my belief if we engage children emotionally, we will get them educationally. And the reason for that is young people are actually really good at exercising social innovation. They don't know what it means, but they know how it does. When I started here as a principal in the Blue Mountains about 12 months ago, I wanted a school that was actually delivered great hope, particularly to our children. And so think about your own children if you have them, or if you're planning on having them, what do you want for them? Do you want them just to be good at English and maths and science? Or do you hope they'll be able to see the needs of the people around them? And then, because they're confident, they can actually step towards them confidently enough, educated enough, and courageously enough to solve those problems regardless of how old they are. I think we need to actually begin to trust our children to love learning again. Do you remember when they were babies and they would pick up a spoon and they'd go to feed themselves, miss entirely and pour it all down the front of them? And we clapped and smiled and took photos and videos anyway. Do you remember when they started to walk? And they would take 2 steps and fall over. And we just sat there and clapped and smiled and took photos and videos anyway. Do you remember when we sent them off to school and we promised them that everything would be okay? Well, it's time for us to start delivering on that promise. What we do now does not serve our children, particularly at the back end of school. It serves a function of sorting children for the government. I want to introduce you to 2 of my students. This is Finley, and that's Nathaniel. Let's start with Finn. Finn is a cracker of a kid. If you ever get to meet Finn, he's a cracker. He's 15 years old, and in my opinion, he is somewhat of a genius. Sure, in a lot of areas, he needs to be exactly like all the other kids his age. But when it comes to inventing, testing, building, evaluating and creating, he is expert level. And I'm not talking hobby farm level, I'm talking expert level. To give you an idea, when I actually told him the story about the T-shirt, and I said I didn't buy the T-shirt because it was $90 US, he actually, in a number of hours, actually made me one. Yeah, right? That's why we like Finn so much. And so it broke my heart when Finn recently, out of frustration, I heard that he decided that he actually wanted to leave school at the end of next year. And that's because of a ticker box model of education that does not see him as Finley, but sees him as a student born in a particular year who has to tick a number of boxes in order to get a good education. And Finley said he was planning on leaving school because school could not keep up with him. He wasn't being arrogant, he was just being honest. And so for now, Finley is a Year 9 student at our school doing Year 11 engineering, and we're looking to employ him as an advisor to our Year 7 program and a mentor to our students. Let me introduce you to Nathaniel. Oh, Nathaniel. I used to sit in the front row of the school Christmas concert. This is my earliest memory of Nathaniel. And he would dance with the more vigour than any child I've ever seen before. So much so that I would sit white-knuckled in the front row, ready to launch in case he danced himself right off the edge of the stage. But listen to Nathaniel's story. He was born at 23 weeks and 6 days. I know, awesome. At birth, he was 760 grams. That's a decent burger and a few fries, if you shop at my burger shop. When he was born, his skin was still translucent. His organs were not fully formed, and his eyes were still fused shut. And 6 days after he was born, he had the first of numerous surgeries. Now, Nathaniel presented to our school with some challenges, but his mum and his dad refused to let the current model of learning decide his story. With the constraints of a 160-year-old model, a Hunger Games model of education, when he was in Year 3, about 8 or 9 years old, his parents were told that it was unreasonable for them to expect that he would meet curriculum outcomes. Why? I can't explain why, but here's what I do know after 30 years in schools. That a prescribed curriculum is a fantastic handmaiden, but it is a terrible master. And when we make it a master, we start to value performance over learning. And when we do that, we have to sacrifice children in order to serve that master. And here's the thing, the rule for schools. Schools should never, ever shrink kids, ever. Well, I'm glad that Nathaniel's parents, Gavin and Kerry, decided they weren't going to listen to that, and they moved Nathaniel to another school, and now he's motivated and he believes that he can and will succeed. And he's going into year 7. And if you like report cards, well, let me tell you this first. He sings in 2 choirs, his school choir and a community choir. He's learning 2 languages, and he's an avid reader. And recently, he got his report card, and he's at level for his age in all bar 1 subject. My question is, how does the Hunger Games model of education work for Nathaniel? And how does the Hunger Games model of education work for Finley? And here's the thing. What we know about competitive models of education is they decrease empathy, and empathy scores over the last 30 years have been declining. Psychologists are calling this the age of angry. And so what we're doing at our school is we're actually looking to design learning around doing good. And because we know that clinically, doing good is good for you. Let me tell you this story and tell me what you think, whether or not these kids are actually set up for learning or not. As a principal, I get to work with 10-year-olds right through to 18 months to 18-year-olds. 10-year-olds did this. They went to the local nursing home for a visit. While at the nursing home, they got involved in conversation with the residents and asked the question, what do you miss most about owning your own home? And the answer came back, we miss travelling. These wonderful people missed the opportunity to travel. And so these young people went back to school, downloaded and designed virtual reality experiences, and on their next visit, took virtual reality goggles to the nursing home, and these people the residents could actually enjoy sailing the canals of Venice, walking the Champs-Élysées and watching a sunrise over Uluru. Isn't that what we want for our kids? Isn't that what education is meant to deliver? You know, children acting out of empathy makes the world a better place, and it shows that it is working. And I want to say this as I close. Finley and Nathaniel are not outliers. They're not. They're like your son, your daughter, your grandchild, your niece and your nephew. And here's what I know. If we can get the model of learning right, then education can do its beautiful work. And if we create something that works for all children and not just the top part of the 47%, a model of education that equips young people for more of what they were created to be and more of what they were created to do, so much more than a number and a rank after 14 years of schooling, then we serve the next generation of children the way we are meant to. Thank you.